Hi, and welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Pho, founder and editor of KevinMD. Rate and review the show at kevinmd.com/rate. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/follow. Today we welcome back on the show Cindy Tsai. She's an internal medicine physician. Her latest KevinMD article is What I Learned After Being Hacked on Social Media. Cindy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Now, we've had wonderful episodes in the past together, so if you want to hear more from Cindy, just search back to our prior episodes. But I want to get straight into this article, and I want to hear about your story, about your experiences about getting hacked on Instagram. But before we do, tell us about your Instagram presence and what it meant to you as a physician.
Sure. So I transitioned from clinical medicine to coaching and speaking and have really been building a presence on social media. And so my Instagram was definitely an opportunity for me to share content, to connect with followers and friends and people. And so it is a part of my coaching business and also just representation of who I am online.
Now, tell us what kind of content you would post on your Instagram account and how that would help you get clients.
Yeah, so I post content like I write blog articles regularly when I'm on podcasts and also just different types of inspirational, motivational content. I post videos and reels and just like different ways to share information with people because I focus on helping people manage stress and decrease burnout. And so I share a lot of different useful tips in that way.
Now, where did it place in terms of your overall social media presence? Like, how did it compare to, say, your Facebook presence or your Twitter presence?
So I would say the two primary social media accounts I focus on would be LinkedIn and Instagram. I do have other social media, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, but I was primarily focused on LinkedIn and Instagram, even though I do have presence on the other social media channels as well.
So let's hear more about your story titled What I Learned After Being Hacked on Social Media. So tell my audience what exactly happened.
Yeah, so I remember just checking my email and then seeing this email from Instagram saying, the email on your account was changed.
Mm.
And if you didn't change your email address, you can secure your account here. And I was really confused because I was like, well, what's going on? And I clicked the link, but it was too late because the email, the password, everything had already been changed. So I couldn't log in. And I was like, what's going on? Like,
Mm.
you hear about people getting hacked and you never think that it could happen to you. And this was like at 9:10 p.m. Right. And so I tried to contact Instagram, like started Googling voraciously of like, okay, well, what do you do when your account is hacked? And then just like going through the whole like roller coaster of emotions, like being frustrated, angry, sad, confused, like all of these things. And just unsure. I mean, and then I realized that it was essentially just like almost impossible to reach somebody in
Mm.
customer service. And then so I think I was able to really just look at how I was thinking and feeling about things and able to kind of figure things out like, okay, well, let's stay calm, right? What do I
Mhm.
do first? XYZ. And in the coming days, as I was still not able to get access to my account, I really reflected on kind of the whole experience and came up with the various tips that I shared in the article.
Sure.
So,
So when you went to your account after that email was changed, what did your account look like?
so they apparently, the hacker actually changed the account to a private account.
Hmm.
And I hadn't actually followed myself in like another account. I think some people do that, and that's probably a smart thing to do. So I actually really had no idea what my account looked like anymore because I couldn't even see it. And then thankfully, I had some close friends and family, and I was like, hey, my account's hacked. Let me know what's going on. And then so they would be giving me updates about saying how, oh, they just posted a story about how you made a lot of money doing crypto and mining. And I was like, what is going on? So thankfully, a lot of people who have been following me actually reached out to me too. They're like, hey, I think your account is hacked. But then I think there were also people at the same time who maybe didn't know me personally, who were kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Like, is she kind of transitioning into finance or something, investing?
So it was 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. You realize that your account is now private. It's sending out some strange crypto advice stuff to your followers. You went on Google and obviously couldn't reach Instagram. Tell me what happened next.
Well, so I think a lot of the messages, a lot of the articles talked about how you can send in requests for verification in terms of using selfies and whatever. So I was able to send that in, and then it was essentially just a waiting game of like waiting to hear back. And what was funny was actually I would hear back in like a day or two, and they'd be like, oh, we can't verify your
Mm,
selfie. And so I actually had to do it 5 times,
wow.
which was kind of frustrating. But at the same time, I was really able to just be like, one of the lessons I think I shared was this idea that attachment creates suffering. And I think for me, just learning that, yes, I had spent a lot of time and energy on building my Instagram and like social media, but it was my attachment to wanting it back that really created a lot of suffering and all of that. And so I really reminded myself that, hey, like I can always recreate everything, right? Because it came from
Hmm.
me. And it's just that attachment of like an expectation of like wanting my account back and all these things that was really making it even harder on
Hmm.
myself. And so I think it's a really important lesson just for life in general, right? So often we get attached to things, we want things to be a certain way, and then we get disappointed when things don't work out. So that was a really good reminder for me.
Now, eventually, did you get control back of your account?
I did. After a week-ish, I was able to thankfully get access back. And I was almost at the point of like, and it was frustrating because I couldn't even create a new account. It was kind of just in this standstill. But I think the good thing is because I had these other social media accounts, I had an email list and all these other things. It wasn't like I was just stuck kind of like in this void. And so I think that's also really important to remember, especially if you are on social media, that you diversify. And
Hmm.
especially if you're using social media like for your business or something, right? It's like you in terms of visibility. So I think diversification is important. We talk about it in investments, right?
Hmm.
It's also true in the sense of like, you can be on different platforms, you can share different content, and that it's all going to be fine.
Yeah, I like to reiterate your stance on diversification when it comes to your online presence because not just being hacked, if you rely, say, on Facebook and they change the algorithm and suddenly you go to zero followers or get zero visibility, that can really affect your business. So I'm going to second your suggestion to diversify an online presence. Now, do you have any idea about how the hackers got hold of your account?
No. Yeah, I mean, I think because I generally am very mindful of not clicking on random links or things like that. I mean, I feel like in this day and age, there's so many things that we are probably doing that are exposing
Hmm.
ourselves. And that's why I brought up two-factor authentication
Mm.
and how I didn't turn that feature on prior to this, but had it been turned on, which is why I encourage everyone to do that, then there would have been that additional step to verify
Hmm.
before I think these settings could have been changed. And it's interesting because for work, I think we all have two-factor, all the security measures
Yeah.
activated and turned on. But then for social media, for me, I was just like, oh, it's social media. It's like not a big deal. But after this experience, the first thing I did was to turn it on for all my other platforms
Hmm.
and accounts, so that it doesn't happen there too.
Did you have to navigate this experience by yourself? Did you have a social media team or a tech team to help you out?
No, I navigated it primarily by myself. I had some people who I knew who were like in social media or kind of like digital marketing and things like that. But it was unfortunate because I feel like a lot of the things you see online, it's like very much the same. You kind of feel like your hands are tied in
Hmm.
some ways because you can't reach anybody in customer service. There's like, throughout this whole experience, I never spoke to anybody, whether it's like phone or
Hmm.
chat or anything. It was just all submit this selfie, right? Submit this form, complete this, and then you'll hear back in 1 to 2 days. So it was definitely frustrating at times when it's just like, oh, you're kind of like, feels like you're isolated and stuck in some ways.
Tell me how stressful this whole experience was, especially since your Instagram is connected to your personal business. And you mentioned a few ways earlier in this interview about how you handle that stress, but to give some advice and tips to those physicians who may be going through a similar story.
Yeah, well, I think that I was definitely very stressed at the beginning. And it was probably just because everything was such a shock that it was happening. And I really credit the practice of mindfulness and coaching for me to really be able to stay calm soon after and throughout, and to be able to really recognize and reflect on this experience. And I think that one thing I mentioned in the article is this idea of control,
Mm.
and how a lot of times we think we have control over things, but we really don't. And I thought this was a really great reminder that control is an illusion. And, I think that my efforts of trying to regain access, to get my account back, like all these things we're trying to basically control, right? It's like, hey, this is my account. This is part of my business. I need this back. I don't want them to be posting like random things and whatever. But this attempt to like gain control was really actually disrupting my own sense of peace.
Hmm.
And so I think it's really, I mean, it's much easier said than done, especially a lot of times when you're in this state of panic and emergency and loss and whatever fear. But I do think it's really helpful to remember that, like, at the end of the day, what you can control is your response, right? Are you going to react or are you going to respond? Are you going to take that moment to just like breathe and recognize, in the grand scheme of things, everything's going to be fine?
We're talking to Cindy Tsai. She's an internal medicine physician. Her latest Kevin MD article is titled What I Learned After Being Hacked on Social Media. Cindy, what are some of your take home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
So I definitely want to encourage everyone to turn on two-factor authentication on all of your accounts if you haven't already. And I think it's really important to diversify, as we talked about. And I think just really trying to be present and enjoy whatever you're doing on social media, whether it's for business or not. But I do think that it's a way for us to communicate and to reach different people, but it doesn't replace like who you are, in terms of like your actual connections with people. So yes, it's a part of business, but it's not the whole picture. Like, it's still important to have a call with someone, to like really build those relationships so that people really get to know you, and you get to share your message in a way that feels good to you.
Cindy, thank you so much for sharing your story, time, and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.